desert of northern New Mexico, this is Circle for Original Thinking. I'm your host, Glenn Aparicio Perry. Welcome to Circle for Original Thinking, America's electronic talking circle for visionary thinkers. An open forum for fresh ideas and timeless wisdom applied to today's political and ecological challenges. Each week, we bring together creative thinkers from a variety of different traditions. We ask the hard questions on the important issues of the day: political polarization, climate change, virulent viruses, and other symptoms of humanity being out of balance with the natural world. Our goal is to recreate a whole and sacred America, a new and improved version of E Pluribus Unum, from the many to the one, and this time not leave anybody out. Join us as we embark on this quest. Marcellus Bear Heart Williams is what I call a living ancestor. A living ancestor is a person whose wisdom has not departed, but instead has taken up residence in the hearts of those who loved him, and even perhaps in those that never met him, someone like myself. Living ancestors are not deceased, as in inert or forgotten. Their energy has not been destroyed. Their spirit and work in the world is ongoing. Join us as we enter into a conversation with the spirit of Bear Heart, his wife, Reginah Waterspirit, and medicine helper, and also entering the conversation is Tim Amsden, the editor of the newly released book from Synergetic Press, The Bear is My Father, which is the brilliant companion piece to the equally brilliant The Wind is My Mother that first came out in 1996. So I want to introduce my guests now, and first, I'm going to introduce Marcellus Bear Heart Williams because we're inviting him into the conversation. And we're inviting in all the ancestors that bring wisdom through us. So thank you so much. And thank you, Reginah, for your beautiful prayer before we pressed record. Thank you so much. Now, Marcellus Bear Heart Williams was born a full-blooded member of the Muscogee Creek Nation in 1918 in Oklahoma. And he was one of the last traditionally trained medicine persons of his tribe. And he studied for 14 years under two different medicine men. And then he went on to obtain an undergraduate degree, a divinity degree, majoring in biblical Greek, and eventually an honorary PhD in humanities. He was a roadman in the Native American Church, an ordained American Baptist minister, and he spoke 14 languages, 13 of them native. He prayed with President Truman. He put down prayers with police and firemen at Ground Zero, New York City. And he served on a variety of national and international panels and board. And he has authored two books, of course, The Wind is My Mother and The Bear is My Father, which we've mentioned. And he passed to the spirit world in August 4th, 2008, but his energy and open-hearted, unconditional love continues to radiate and continues to enrich people all around the globe, including our guests here, very much so. So Reginah Waterspirit, who is the wife and medicine helper of Bear Heart, is the co-author of The Bear is My Father. And Reginah is originally from the Bronx, New York, and she's an artist. She's an artist from birth, she says, and she sees all of life as art and has owned and operated numerous businesses, all centered around some form of art. In 1979, she boarded the Queen Elizabeth II ship in New York Harbor and crossed the Atlantic Ocean bound for Europe. And after traveling through the Netherlands and the Greek islands, she ended up in Italy in the 14th century structure that was inhabited by Machiavelli when he wrote The Prince. And in the early 1980s, she studied voice dialogue from the originators of the method, Hal and Sidra Stone. And that was the beginning of a life change that led her to meeting Bear Heart. She She was 42 years old when she embarked on a brand new life adventure with Bear Heart, and they worked and traveled together for the next 23 years throughout the United States, Europe, Mexico, Canada. And she went on to become an independent teacher of voice dialogue and other psycho-spiritual disciplines, and now she teaches Art in the Park, a realistic type drawing class for the very young and the elderly that honors our connection with all living things. Now, Reginah is a member of the Earth Tribe. That's a group, a community of individuals. They've been influenced by Bear Heart, but they're very much people who experience themselves as one of many species, not higher or lower in stature with the animals, the plants, the minerals, etc. And Reginah herself is very much a dog and animal lover and lives in Albuquerque. I think your dog now is Rocky, right? But she, yes, she and Rocky reinforces her connection to the land. She's had some wonderful dogs. I've met some of them. So now Tim Amsden, who was born in Wichita, Kansas, and he earned his JD from the University of Iowa and worked for the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency in Kansas City for 25 years, primarily on water quality protection issues. Bless you, Tim. Thank you for that. He now lives with his wife, Lucia, in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and his writings have appeared in journals and anthologies throughout the U.S., as well as in Canada, Algeria, Ireland, and Turkey. And he has a full-length book of poetry, Vanishing Point, that was published in 2015. Of course, he's the editor, and he's also a contributor to the book, The Bear is My Father. We'll talk about that perhaps, but The Bear is My Father includes, besides Bear Heart's original writing and Reginah's original writing, there are other contributions from people who knew and loved Bear Heart, which is very sweet. So he's also right now just about finished with his own book called Love Letter to Ghostland, Living Along an Ancient New Mexico Trail, which is a portrait of his life with Lucia in Rama, New Mexico, and the history and deep spirit that permeates that sacred place. And boy, that is a very sacred place out there. So welcome, Tim, welcome Reginah, welcome Bear Heart, welcome whoever is listening and all the spirits of the ancestors that are listening too. We welcome you all. We have room. Come on in. Hello, how's everyone doing today?
Thank you so much, Glenn. Great
to be here.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna start with a softball question. Well, maybe not really, but I understand that when Bear Heart prepared people to go out on a vision quest, he would ask them to ask themselves, "Who am I? Why am I here? What are my gifts? What am I supposed to be doing?" So I want to ask our guests to answer those questions and also perhaps add how Bear Heart or others may have helped find your own way. Who am I? Why am I here? What are my gifts? What am I supposed to be doing? That kind of gets to the core of the matter, doesn't it? So Reginah, we'll start with you.
Well, thank you, Glenn. That's such a perfect question. I'm not saying it's an easy one to answer. I'm just saying the question is perfect. I have to get one little thing out of the way before I can concentrate on that, is that many people say that Bear Heart spoke 14 languages. But in my original writing about that, there's a little tiny word, I-N, in. He spoke in 14 languages. So I'm putting that out there on this podcast to try to get everybody to focus on that, because I don't want to misrepresent him as being fluent in those languages. Thank you for listening to that. Now, why am I here? Why am I doing what I'm doing? These are very big questions, and the reason that you go on a vision quest and that you fast and don't have water is to prepare your whole being, not just your body, but your mind, your spirit, everything, to prepare yourself for nature, to connect with nature in a way that lets you know the answer to those questions. Mm-hmm. So I think what I would like to share is a quick little story. I'll give you the shortened version of it. How I was out on a vision quest with a group of people. I wasn't really scheduled to quest with them, but I decided at the last minute, I'm going out there. So I find myself a nice place by a tree, and I put my Indian blanket down, and I've got my chanupa, and I'm holding on to that pipe because the instructions are you hold on to the pipe and take care of that pipe. It will take care of you. So a 60-mile-an-hour wind comes up, a real wind, not a spirit wind, comes up, and I'm holding on to that pipe for dear life. All of a sudden, I'm flying around the universe, and I have this feeling that I am no longer taking care of the pipe, holding on to the pipe, but that the pipe is taking me on a journey, and the pipe is holding me. Now, I have to say that I don't follow, all the ways of Native Americans in using the pipe. I have a personal pipe, but I'm not going to say too much about that right now. So my purpose and what I do in life, I would describe as trying to help people get in touch with their own individual psychic fingerprint. In other words, relating that to the pipe taking care of me and directing the travel. Once you get in touch with your individual psychic fingerprint, we say, the clues are there. They've been there from the very beginning. Just like me getting my name Waterspirit. One of my earliest remembrances is I was about 3 or 4 years old. My brother was holding me up to a water fountain in the Catskill Mountains, and the sun was shining on the water drops. There it is, right there, right from the beginning. And then I could go on and tell you stories about water and how it was speaking to me. And here I am with this name, Waterspirit. Who knew?
So that's one of your gifts. That's one of your gifts, to connect to water and the spirit of water. And it was manifested from 3 years old. That's your earliest memory.
Well, it is a gift, but more important than the gift to me is that I've learned tools, like in the voice dialogue work, I've learned tools to pass on to other people so that they can get in touch with these clues that help them say, oh, I'm supposed to be, I have this gift and I'm supposed to be using it.
And how did Bear Heart get you to... Well, he's the one who got you to the Vision Quest, I imagine. But how did he shift your life? And I know it's so many ways, but just share one story with us that awakened you. I mean,
I have to pick one story.
If I have to give you, I'll give you a cue, if you don't mind, because I thought it was really beautiful. I don't mind. When you were talking about the doing the healing work with the woman that suffered from Bell's palsy, and and then you had this awareness around you began to become aware that sometimes you had negative feelings towards people attending, help from Bear Heart, but then somehow something shifted for you. That was
Well, I once said to Shelley Morrison Dominguez, who's an actress, a late Shelley Morrison, I said to her, I don't like 98% of the people who come to see Bear Heart. They're the neediest people I've ever met. And she looked at me and she said, Reginah, why do you think they come to see Bear Heart? And I'm like, it stopped my brain process, and I said to myself, oh my God, I'm one of them. It's like, yes, we all have needs, and we seek out people, in this case Bear Heart, who maybe looks like he has an answer for that. And I think the answer that I got was ultimately, it didn't happen overnight, that's for sure, was a connection with nature, that I went through a whole string of people, but if I pay attention to what's happening around me, we say, watch what comes into your circle. If I pay attention to that, they're speaking to me all the time. I'll give you a perfect example. I just went for the book to do a little impromptu book signing at a store in Old Town Albuquerque, and a pure white dove came and sat on the ground. I've never seen him at my house before. He sat on the ground and stared at me. I couldn't even close the door of my car. And Bear Heart always communicated through that dove. But I've never seen one here until I was going to do that little book signing.
Oh my.
And so he was just giving me a blessing. I asked him to please get out of the way because I was late.
Okay. Well, thank you. I want to turn to Tim and ask him, who also was touched by Bear Heart as a dear friend. I don't even know if you've gone on the vision quest with Bear Heart, but I'm sure you've considered these questions. Who am I? Why am I here? What are my gifts? What am I supposed to be doing? And how that may have, how would you answer that? And I apologize for the easy questions. We do this podcast is a little different. We do deep dialogue on it. So, but go right ahead.
Well, that's probably the fundamental question. When I think back on my life, I realize that who am I and why am I here reveals itself more in where did I go when I didn't know I was going to go there. I think in the ancient Chinese curse it says, "May your fondest dreams come true." And following the meander of my life from Wichita, Kansas to all the places I've gone working at EPA on water issues, which is a nice synchronicity with Reginah's water name, and I realized that probably the reason I'm here is just to kind of elevate the energy of things if I can. However that works out. I love to write. One of the amazing things was to move to Raymond, New Mexico from Kansas City and discover this place that included Bear Heart and Reginah and other people that were much different than the people I knew, and discover that I loved that place more than any place else on earth. And so there are doors that open even when you're in your 70s, because we were in our 60s at the time. So it's just interesting to look back and say, wasn't that an amazing step that we took that led us to Reginah and Bear Heart and all the other wonderful people out there, and that deep spiritual connected place, both because of the people who have lived there and their history and the power of the natural world. And so that was it's my wife and I were just talking, Liz and I were just talking this morning about how often your calling, you may have many callings, and they may come to you early and they may come to you late, but ours, and that was true of both of us, that we'd had callings and we'd gone here and there in our lives. But it's nice to be able to say there are new horizons and new discoveries and new ways to open up. And certainly Bear Heart and Reginah blew the doors off a lot of things for us, and not just them, but the Zunis and the Navajos and the other people we were with there, and the old hippies and the whole, that whole mix. And so I guess I'm here to continue to experience things and to try to elevate the energy of things, and to just continue to live the best life that I can. So.
Beautiful. So thank you. So we want to also ask the question, how this book came about, The Bear is My Father, because it comes out quite a bit after The Wind is My Mother, and it has this gestation period that's unusually long, but I'm so grateful that it has come out. And so I want to ask you both. We'll go back to Reginah, but what is the story behind this book? And feel free to include any, related stories of Bear Heart that as they just come up in natural flow, because this is an important book, and I'm so glad it came out, and I heartily endorse it. Encourage everyone to read it. The Bear is My Father on Synergetic Press. So, Reginah.
Yes. Well, definitely it was a long gestation period. I think it's been close to 20 years. When The Wind is My Mother came out in 1996, and Bear Heart was actually reading his own book, he turned to me and he said, I have a lot more to say. I said, well, Bear Heart, you don't have to be a one-book guy. You could write another book. He didn't really write it. We taped him. So he started making notes, and he started asking me questions about, what I thought about this and that. And we recorded some things and put them down. And I said, it would be nice if we allowed other people to talk about their experiences with you, because you've helped so many people, and they've had these life-changing experiences. So why don't we, instead of making it such a, just a follow-up, why don't we invite these people into the book? And so people would come to visit, and we would interview them and record them and get it transcribed. And those people, they're all over the place. I don't know if the ones from Europe actually made it. I don't think they made it into the book, but others from upstate New York, Kansas, Texas, from all over the United States are in the book. And I just, and then when I got a telephone call from Synergetic Press from Doug Rael, one of the things that he said to me that really touched my heart was that he felt that this book was different and important because it included the voices of the community that Bear Heart had been close to and had done so much for. And boy, I'll tell you, I just felt so acknowledged by that, because I kind of thought, well, maybe it was just a silly thing to do. The book should be just about Bear Heart. And it is about Bear Heart, but it's through the eyes of people that he supported.
That's really important. That's really important. And Tim, you were a contributor of the book. What was the story that you told about your experience with Bear Heart? Please share it.
I'll add just one thing to what Reginah said, which is that we drafted the book in one form maybe 17 years ago. And then later, when we had a new opportunity, we changed it as Reginah suggested, which I think added all kinds of things to it. The blessing for me of that long timeline was that we had Reginah and Bear Heart as a family and friend. And it meant that Bear Heart would talk to me and include me and Reginah when he did some things, because he knew an insight would help me to be a better editor. And one of the things was, in particular, was going to a Sundance. We'd never been to a Sundance. We'd seen the movie many, many years ago, that involved the Sundance. But it was a wonderful, wonderful experience to go and attend a Sundance, and they stayed with us for it was three day dance, and to go there as an observer, as a guest, and there was almost no one there except family of people who were dancing, and watch the piercings and the dancing and the pulling back and the tearing out of the ties on their shoulders or on the ends of the shoulders, and just appreciate what a deep experience these people are going through, and what an honor it is to be there and fall into that chant, that continuous drumming chant that goes on for 3 days off and on while the people are dancing. And Bear Heart and Reginah were there. Bear Heart was an honored elder, and he would pray with the dancers before they set out. And I know he'd Sundanced several times himself. And it was just that kind of being able to be inside and look at things. I went with Bear Heart once when he did a medicine ceremony with a mutual friend of ours, and with her permission, I got to observe that, and we talked about things like that. And so it's just that to be inside of those things and be able to spend that time with Bear Heart and with Reginah was just a magnificent gift.
Wonderful, wonderful. And I love reading that part in the with that tale where you were talking about how when it was time to go to the Sundance, you would notice that Bear Heart had just, put on his hat, and maybe he was walked out the door, and he was just going down the road. It was like 30 miles away of the Sundance, but when you guys got aware that, found out he wasn't there anymore, then you figured out he was on the road, then you'd go pick him up and go on.
He wouldn't say it's time to go. Let's jump in the car. He'd just be gone, and we knew he'd be out there to pick him up.
Yeah. One of the things that really comes through all the time, and I think it's, I have this unusual experience because Reginah, I consider you a really dear friend, and also Mike Three Bears, a dear friend, and you're both, incredibly close to Bear Heart. You were his wife. I mean, Mike Three Bears ended up leading Vision Quest in the Bear Heart, I guess you'd say, method, with the blessing of Bear Heart. And I hadn't met Bear Heart personally, but I sure feels like I have. And I feel his spirit coming through all the time. And I feel his sense of humor, through you. And I just want to ask you, what were the most... I also appreciate too how Bear Heart himself said, so many people are they're too serious. Like they'll read one heavy book after another, and then he would read, maybe a very serious book and then a very light one, and he knew how to keep. He knew how to have balance. He knew how to walk in balance, and so. what are some of your experiences with Bear Heart where he has, his sense of humor has really won the day and just stuck with you?
Well, yeah, I'm really so touched by how you come up with these subjects to talk about. One of my favorite ones of bringing things into balance is the way I would wake up in the middle of the night and Bear Heart would be singing, and then I'd realize that he just woke me up with his singing, and he'd be singing, Old Man River, that old man river, he just keeps, and, so anyway, I don't want to perform here, and I'm not really.
Hey, go for it.
And so I'd say, Bear Heart, I'm sleeping here, and then in the morning, this happened over and over and over and over again. I'm kind of a slow learner. I think that's one of the reasons I spent so much time with him. I said, that song, that does have something to do with me. It was like an opening for me. It was like I get stuck in places, and I'm known as being intense about being intense. And I really need to focus on this old man river and how he keeps flowing along, and Bear Heart, he would just bring that out in the middle of the night. Now, if you ask Bear Heart why he was singing that song, he would just kind of look at you quizzically, like a little child, like, I don't know, it just came to me. And of course, I always attributed that to the sacred medicine plant, the peyote, because I would joke around and tell people that his DNA was soaked in peyote, and that he would be in touch with the medicine that was needed for the moment. And so he was being a channel. This is, I may be making this up, but this is my viewpoint of what was going on. He was being a channel to bring in the medicine that I needed in that moment. Now, maybe he needed it also, but I wasn't focused on that. And I can't tell you how many times people have, especially women, have come to me crying, saying, Reginah, why did Bear Heart say this to me? It just has thrown me off, a cliff. And I'd say, well, let's look at what's going on here. And because there's medicine there. There's medicine. And sometimes the medicine doesn't taste so good, but if we just take a tiny little bit of it, which is all I've really had of the medicine plant, the peyote, just a tiny little bit of it sometimes can do a lot. So that's, I hope that is somewhat of an answer for you. And I did want to say how much I appreciate Tim and Lucia, because he keeps saying these beautiful things about me, but I have to tell everybody, this book, The Bear is My Father, would not be here without Tim and Lucia. People think that I'm responsible for it, but the truth is they were the backbone of making this book happen. So I just wanted to slip that in.
Well,
Very sweet.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and Tim, what were were there particular challenges of editing a book of material from a spiritual elder that's steeped in the oral tradition, and really it's the book emerges from him speaking and the recording of his speaking. So how does that?
It is a challenge. Assembling a book like that is a challenge, but the thing about Bear Heart is that it's almost his energy is more powerful than his words. And it comes through, it flows through the book, it flows through me. I still have Bear Heart around helping me with what I'm doing now. And he just, it's a matter of energy. This is a man who was highly educated, who was a Baptist minister, a roadman in the Native American church, a traditional medicine person from his tribe, but he spoke very simply. His appearance and his way of speaking and his nature are all very much from his tribe and from his background and from his history, and it can look deceptively simple. I think when you've been through everything he's been through and looked at so many things, he loved all the different religions. He loved the way the Jewish people had rites of passage. He knew people who were Hindus and Muslims, and he was familiar with all of that. He had no judgments about any of that kind of thing. His gift was that he could speak to anyone. The people that I knew, the first time I met Bear Heart, we were at a wedding with the eclectic people in our new home in Reginah, and he was performing a ceremony that was a native ceremony, and it involved the gay community. It involved people who weren't gay. It involved everybody there, and everybody felt like they were a part of it. And he just didn't carry judgments about people. He could describe the pain that his ancestors had gone through, but he didn't carry a grudge. He was open to everybody. And the man who was getting married was a white man, and he called Bear Heart grandfather. And there were so many people from so many walks of life who called this man grandfather because he was without judgment. He could walk in any environment. He could be on a panel of experts in Germany, or he would be ministering to people through a Native American church ceremony with peyote in a sweat lodge. So he was just a phenomenal man.
Yes,
and what a gift that was, and that energy flowed through everything we did in putting this book together.
Thank you for that. Yeah, he did have the gift of forgiveness, and I can't remember which book it's in, whether it's in The Wind is My Mother or The Bear is My Father, but at one point he breaks down the word forgiveness, and it's forgiving.
Yes.
And he says, giving what? Love. So I really appreciated the way he made a connection between love and forgiveness that was, just a sacred bond there. Simple, but pure, true. So I wanted to ask you, Reginah, next, about it's almost humorous thing that happened when Bear Heart was dying. Almost humorous because because you found humor in everything, and you were very concerned about it at the time.
It's irreverent. Right? It's irreverent to be humorous about dying, but he had no problem. He had no problem with it.
Okay, and I hope you don't have a problem with me either doing that. But you were concerned. Remember, you were concerned about him because you thought like maybe that he wanted to cross over, but he wasn't, maybe there was something preventing him or something, you weren't sure, so you asked him about that, and he said something very interesting that you didn't find out till after he passed what he was really saying. Yeah. Tell us that story. It's pretty fascinating.
Well, actually, it was the hospice people who brought it to my attention that he wasn't going on schedule. And I was like, well, excuse me, but that's between him and his creator. I don't have anything to do with it. I'm just here to take care of him physically. So I went in, I sat down on the edge of the bed, and I said, Bear Heart, the hospice people are saying that the reason that you haven't gone on yet is because there's too much love in the house. And so he kind of just looked at me, and I said, well, do you want to go or do you want to stay? And he said, well, I'd like to stay, but I have to go. So I said, well, okay, that answers that. And I went back and I told the hospice people what he said and everything. And of course, then several months went by. I don't know how many months, maybe 7. And 2 years after he passed, the movie came out, Lincoln, and I wanted to see it by myself because Bear Heart loved Lincoln, and I didn't want any interference from any friends talking to me or anything, so I went to the movies by myself. This was obviously before COVID, and Lincoln is in his little cabinet room. It was just a little dark office, and I'm sure a lot of people saw the movie, and his cabinet fellows or buddies are there, and he's about ready to go to the theater, and Mary, his wife, is like really on his case about going to the theater, and he's putting on his overcoat, and he says to his buddies, he says, you know, I'd like to stay, but I have to go. And at that moment in the movie, I said to myself, that little rascal, he was quoting Lincoln. He was quoting Lincoln to me on his deathbed when I'm talking about a serious thing, you know, and he quoted Lincoln to me. He always knew. He was always on purpose. He always knew what he was saying, why he was saying it, and what effect it was going to have. And I certainly have not mastered that yet.
Wow.
I'm working on it.
What a story. And I want to ask you one other thing that's related to the subject. Bear Heart had suffered the loss of his son, but and something that connects The Wind Is My Mother to The Bear Is My Father, I thought very powerfully, was the addition of the person that you discovered, Herb McDonald. So the Bear Heart didn't know about her in his life, but he had lost his son in an airplane accident, and then. But somehow, and tell us the story of how you met Herb and how you found out the story of how he was involved in the recovery project of, well, it turned out to be no living, but the recovery project of the people who had died on the plane and the unique circumstances of Bear Heart's son. That's a powerful story. You share it. Yeah.
Well, Bear Heart's son, Mark Nathan Williams, was 17. He wanted to go in the service. He was in the Coast Guard, before that as a teenager, I guess a program. And they asked him, the service fellows asked him to go on a secluded duty because he was so spiritually grounded. So his parents, they didn't really want him to go, but he insisted on it, so they signed the papers, and he said he wanted to get it over with, and they drove him to San Francisco. The whole story is in the book, and he was flying into the Philippines, and the plane hit a wire. It was a pilot problem, and I think there were 84 servicemen, young servicemen, and they all perished in that crash. So Herb McDonald happened to be in charge of cleanup for that Clark's Air Force Base in the Philippines. And he unbuckled, he says he did the last thing that the boy had done for himself was buckle him in. He unbuckled his seatbelt and laid him out, and he wasn't touched. He must have gone from the inhalation of the smoke and everything. So several years after Bear Heart passed, I got a telephone call from Herb McDonald, and he told me the story of how he was reading The Wind Is My Mother, and he read about that crash at Clark's Air Force Base, and he told me about his part in it. Well, I didn't say anything to his family members because I figured, well, why bring all of this back up at a time like this? It wasn't appropriate. So I never really did. But now it is in the book, The Bear is My Father. And it's really kind of an amazing story because it ties together Bear Heart's story of where he comes from. He was always threatening me from the very beginning that he was going to go to Uranus. And so I said, well, Bear Heart, I'm not going to Uranus. I'm not following you to Uranus. I have no idea what the shopping's like up there. I could get lost in some forgotten place, you know. But so he was talking really about the Star Nation. And so that story of Mark going on and Herb McDonald ties together the connection with the Star Nations. That's all I'm going to say about it right now.
It really does. Well, thank you for that. And, you know, I was moved by the story, the fact that Bear Heart's son, he wasn't touched. He was in the seat. He all these other bodies were, you know, mutilated in horrific ways. But also, I think that in the book it talks about that his face was composed. So
yeah,
it's Bear Heart's son must have been this incredible spiritual being who was at peace. And I think that may have had a lot to do with why his body wasn't mutilated somehow. It's just an amazing story, and the fact that Bear Heart's life has touched so many people, and then The Wind Is My Mother touched so many people, is translated in so many languages, and it continues to do this beautiful, loving work in the world. And now for The Bear Is My Father to come out. What a blessing. And thank you to Synergetic Press. Thank you, Doug Rao, for seeing the beauty in the book. Thank you, Reginah. Thank you, Tim, for the wonderful work that you've done on this book. It's a very, very important book, and it's important for just the reason Reginah was speaking about earlier. You know, the way that it brings in this community, the way that it includes all of the human family together. And as Tim was speaking about, the way Bear Heart was so inclusive, well, that's the kind of feeling you're going to get if you read this book. And that's an important feeling to have, because we are all far more alike than we're different. And I wonder how Bear Heart would think about the United States even now with our polarization and what have you. But I think he would be an important messenger, and that's why his message is still very relevant today. We're more alike than we're different, so we better start loving each other. So thank you again. This was a real honor and a blessing to do this program. This program is made possible in part by Select Books, Waterside Publications, BizGenix, and the Ecology Prime Media Channel. Native flute music by Orlando Secatero from the Pathways CD. Liberty Song by artist Ron Crowder, written by Ron Crowder, Jim Casey, and Danny Casey. Post-production editing by Scout Media Strategies. The Circle for Original Thinking is a grassroots think tank whose mission is to seek out the deep origins of contemporary thought in order to remember and restore, sometimes I think restory, heart-centered wisdom for humanity and all our relations on Earth. This podcast is available on Select Books, Inc. Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and wherever podcasts are normally heard. For more information, go to originalthinking.us or originalpolitics.us. And you can also find and purchase my books, Original Thinking and Original Politics, there. Thank you for listening, and until next week, many blessings of good health and well-being to you. Thank you.